everyone. Welcome back to another week with PGCPS TV. We're here doing distance learning for week 7. So this week we're going to be learning about measurement and data. So our core math today is that data can be represented on a line plot, and this information can be used to understand the data and solve problems about it. Why is organizing data important? Data can tell us different things. It can help us make informed decisions, and it can find solutions to problems. So when we think about data and how it's collected, it's often collected in a questionnaire, a survey, something like that. If you take a quiz, the data that your teacher gets from all those quiz results, that data can then inform the instruction the next day. It can inform small groups. It can inform various things. Maybe some kids need more help with certain things. So different data tells us different things. So we're going to watch a video on something called the US Census. The census is a survey that's given out every few years to US residents, and the data that is collected from this survey is then used to inform decisions. So if they see that there's an influx or an increase of people in a certain area, they might realize, oh, we need more hospitals, or we need more staff to do road work. We need different things for different areas. So based on the survey results, different things happen for different communities. So we're going to watch a short video related to the US Census.
Can one girl in a small town, an architect in a major city, and a suburban high school coach shape the future of the United States? Yes, they can. Because every 10 years, the census gives us that power. You can shape your future by responding to the 2020 census. Where do we need new roads to make our lives easier? Where will new school programs help our children thrive? Where could a new health clinic benefit neighborhoods? The 2020 census will inform these decisions and shape how billions of dollars will be distributed to communities like yours each year. And in 2020, you can respond to the census online, by phone, or by mail. It's easy, safe, and important. Make sure you and everyone you know is counted. Now is the time for you to get involved. Your community needs you. Together, we can educate and excite, inspire, and make sure every voice is heard. Together, we can shape our future.
So just like we saw in the video, the census and different forms of data can help us evaluate and make decisions for society as a whole. So let's give an example. Let's say Metro, which is the subway system and bus system here in the DC area. Let's say Metro took a survey or ran data to see how many people are riding at certain times. They can then make decisions to say, well, we probably need extra buses during certain peak times, and maybe we don't need as many buses running when not as many people are riding the bus. So the data can then inform their practice and help them save money and do better for their community, so the buses are not overcrowded. That's just one example of how data can manifest and help our society. So we're going to start with a math talk. So this math talk is related to a line plot. As you can see here, we have a line plot, and this line plot shows the scores of students on a quiz that was 8 points. So out of 8 points, several students got 3, several got 3.5, several got 4, several got 4.5, and several got 5 out of 8 points. So let's take about 30 seconds to notice and wonder some things, and then we'll discuss them. So let's see some things that we realized. So maybe you didn't realize, but there are 19 students represented in this data set, in this line plot. The reason I know that is that every score, so again, these are scores, every score has a certain number of students. So this shows us that 2 students scored 3 points out of 8. This shows us that 4 students scored 3.5. This shows that 5 students scored 4 points, 5 students scored 4.5 points, and 3 students scored 5 points. So if we added 2 plus 4 to get 6, 5 and 5 make 10, so that's 16, and then 3, that means that there are 19 students. Another thing we noticed is that the 5th graders scored between 3 points and 5 points. So even though the quiz was out of 8 points, they scored between 3 and 5 points. Most students scored between 4 and 4.5 points. Again, we can see that 5 students scored 4 and 5 students scored 4.5. So that's more than half of the students who scored between 4 and 4.5 points. So what are some things that we can think of that this data can help us with? If I was the teacher and I realized that most of my students are scoring between 4 and 4.5 points, out of 8 points, that means that most of them didn't do as well as I may have expected. So most of them scored a little over 50% or around 50%. Several of them scored less than 50%, these students who scored 3 and 3.5. So that might tell me as the teacher, ooh, I need to go back over some things. I can then look at the data a little more in depth and see which questions specifically students didn't do so well on. Maybe all of the students did really well on several questions, and then some questions were very skewed. So some students did well, some didn't do well. So based on that data, I can then reteach something the next day, give something as additional homework, do extra practice, that sort of thing. So let's think about one of the tasks that we have for our unit. So this is about our class task, and we're going to work on this first part, which is hours of sleep. So we're going to pretend like we collected data from our classmates and see what the data tells us. So again, it says, how many hours did you sleep last night to the nearest half hour? So I'm going to place what I slept, which was 7.5 hours. So again, we don't have the actual survey data, but this is assuming we did. We're going to make up or write what we think our class data would look like. So I'm going to think about my 5th grade students and what they might answer. So I'm going to include myself in this data set, and so I'm going to write 7.5. Then I'm going to write other hours that I think students would answer. So some might say 8, some might say 9, some might say 7.5, just like I did. Some might say 7. Some might even say 6 or 6.5. So if we can see here, we have 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21 different people. So 21 respondents. That's what we call them. So they responded to our question or our survey. So the next question says reorganize the data. So again, this data doesn't tell us much, right? It's just a bunch of numbers right now. We want to make sure that we're reorganizing it and listing it from smallest to largest so we can kind of see if there's any sort of patterns, how many people chose a certain number or said a certain number, and we can make inferences from there. So again, we're going to order from smallest or fewest number of hours to longest. So our fewest number of hours was actually the number 6. So if we take the number 6, we see that 3 people responded with the number 6. So 3 people slept 6 hours. Then we have the number 6.5. So we have 2 people slept 6.5 hours. Then we have the number 7. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 people slept 7 hours. 5, 6, 7. So then we look at 7.5, which was the number of hours I said. We have 7.5, that's 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 people said 7.5. So then we look at our next highest number, which is 8. So we had 1, 2, 3 people say they slept 8 hours. And then our highest number, which is 9. And we had 2 people say they slept 9 hours. So just to double check our data, remember we had 21 different respondents. So if we count this up, we have 3, 5, this was 7, so that's 12, plus 4, which is 16, and then plus 5, which is 21. So good, we didn't make any data errors here. So we had 21 people. So the next part says, tally the data in a chart. So again, this is a chart indicating the number of hours of sleep and the number of students. So I'm sure if you participated in the STEM fairs over the years, you've done things like this where you chart different data. So the number of hours of sleep. So we had the number 6, we had 6.5, we had 7, we had 7.5, we had 8, and we had 9. Then we're going to say the number of students that said they slept that many hours. So we had 3 students select 6, 2 students select 6.5, 7 students select 7, 4 students select 7.5, 3 students select 8, and 2 students select 9. So this is a nice, clean way to organize our data. Another nice way to organize our data is through a line plot. So that's what we're going to do on the next page, which is creating a line plot. So again, a line plot has a line at the bottom, and that tells us our categories. In this case, our categories are the number of hours of sleep. So we had 6 hours, 6.5 hours, 7 hours, 7.5 hours, 8 hours, and 9 hours. And then our line plot then graphs the number of people or the number of respondents that indicated that category or that number. So for 6 hours, we had 3 students. So I'm going to place 3 X's, just like we saw in our math talk. These represent the number of students. For 6.5 hours, there were only 2 students. For 7 hours, we had 7 students. So we're going to place 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. For 7.5, we had 4 students. 1, 2, 3, 4. For 8 hours, we had 3 students. 1, 2, 3. And for 9 hours, we had 2 students. So even though the data looks pretty similar for most of the number of hours, you can clearly see that 7 was a very popular number of hours. So a lot of our students slept 7 hours. So remember, we only had 21 respondents, but 7 of them slept 7 hours. So 1/3 of them actually slept 7 hours. So 7 of them. So let's take another minute to kind of look at this data and think about what we notice, what we wonder, and what sort of questions could we ask from this data? What sort of questions could we ask from this data? So now that you've had some time to think, let's go over some sample questions that maybe you already thought of or maybe you hadn't. So one question we could ask from the data is, what is the maximum number of hours that anyone in the class slept? So again, maximum meaning the highest. So we can see here the highest number of hours from our chart is 9 hours. Similarly, we can ask, what is the minimum number of hours that anyone in the class slept? Minimum meaning the fewest. Again, from our chart, the first number, because we ordered it from smallest to greatest, was 6 hours. So that is the fewest number of hours that anyone in our class slept. Another question we could ask is, how many people slept 8.5 hours? So if we look at our chart, we actually see that no one slept 8.5 hours. So we can say no one slept 8.5 hours. And again, people slept more than 8.5, but that's not what the question is asking. It says, how many people slept 8.5 hours? And from our data set, we can see that no one actually did. Some other questions we could ask are, which number of hours did the most people sleep or the fewest? So if we look, the most people, so again, we look at our number of students, the highest number of students was in this category, which means the highest number of students slept 7 hours. So the majority of our students slept 7 hours. So then we say, what was the fewest? So that was actually a tie. So the fewest was 2 students. 2 slept 6.5 hours, and 2 students slept 9 hours. Another question we could ask is, if we ask the student in another grade how long they slept, what do you think is the most likely answer they would give? So again, if we ask a student in another class, we don't know what they're going to say, but we're going to estimate based on the data that we have. Since most of our students said around 7, and a lot of them said 7.5, which was the next greatest number, again, 7 students said 7 and 4 students said 7.5, that means that more than half of our students said 7 or 7.5. So I would say that their most likely answer would be between 7 and 7.5 hours, or I would say around 7 hours. The last question, or another question we could ask, is how many students slept for more than 7 hours? So this means anyone who slept more than, so not equal to 7, but more than 7. So people that slept more than 7 hours slept 7.5, 8, and 9 hours. That was 4, 3, and 2 students. So that means a total of 9 students slept for more than 7 hours. So that's actually a really good thing. We can tell that around half of our students are getting more than 7 hours of sleep, which is a good thing for you at a growing age. Thanks for tuning in today to PGCPS TV. Again, you can always email me at mariam.abdelhamid@pgcps.org for help with anything, or if you want to answer these questions. So again, these questions are for you to show your skills of what you've learned today. So the questions say, here are some heights of a small group of friends in feet. So some of them are 4 feet, some of them are 5 feet, some of them are 4.5, some of them are 4.2 feet. So again, we're dealing with decimals, but don't be alarmed because we've been dealing with them all year, and I'm sure that you're very well versed in them. So the first question says, organize the data in order and then make a line plot, like we did here today. So then it says, which height is the most common in this group of friends? So after you've made your line plot, you want to determine which one is the most common height. And then you're going to ask how many students were 4.5 feet or shorter. So anyone that was 4.5 feet or shorter, you're going to add up those number of students. Have a great day. Catch us next week.